Welcome back to Ms. Nicole Tutoring. Now we're going to be talking about derivative rules for this tutorial, specifically the constant rule, power rule, and the constant multiple rule, just to give us a bit of a head start, and then we'll get into more complicated rules. So the constant rule is actually quite simple. It just tells you that whenever you have a constant, the derivative of that constant is going to be 0. Now, what is a constant? A constant is a term we use to describe some sort of real number, meaning the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,000, 1,000,000, -500, 0, etc. Okay? All those numbers are just constants. They never change, right? That's why they call them a constant. So for example, if we have the derivative, d of x, of some constant c, it's always going to be equal to 0. So let's use some practice. The derivative of 4 is going to be 0. Another way you might see this as if f at x is equal to 4, then f prime of x is going to equal to 0. Okay? Now we could use the limit rule as well to solve for this. We will do that in the next tutorial. Another example may be if we had negative, let's say 1,000,000. Okay? The derivative of that is also going to be, shocker, 0. No matter what, it's always going to be 0. So this is the rule here. Now let's talk about the power rule. So this one looks quite scary, and don't get overwhelmed by it. I promise it's not that bad. If we have d over d to the x, u to the power of a, meaning we're going to have some sort of function that has an exponent, the derivative of that is going to be a times u to the a minus 1 du over dx. I'll just give you first an example so you can apply this. So for example, if I had d over d to the x, so the derivative of x squared is going to equal to 2x. Another example is d over d to the x of x cubed is going to be 3x squared. I hope you're starting to see a pattern. Something I should mention in here is that the derivative of x, meaning some sort of variable to the power of 1, is always going to be just 1. Okay? And we could also look at it this way, is that, well, dx over dx is just equal to 1. Anything divided by itself is just 1. That's another way to remember that. So based on what I just showed you, if we apply this rule step by step, this is what this looks like. So if I take d over d to the x of x cubed, so the derivative of x cubed, first it tells me place down the a value, which is the exponent, 3x, okay? Then I take 3 minus 1, which is 2, and then the derivative of u, which in our case is just x, right? U meaning the function itself. Well, the derivative of just x, as I told you before, is always just going to be 1. So this is 3x squared times 1, or just 3x squared. Now, this incorporates something called the chain rule, which we haven't covered just yet, but we will cover soon. And then you'll see why this is so important to remember. So let's do a couple more practice problems here. The derivative of x to the power of 4 is 4x cubed. I hope you're starting to see the pattern here. We simply bring down the exponent and then subtract 1 from it. In the same way, take a second and guess what would be x to the power of 5. Well, that's 5x to the 4. What about x to the 50? That's 50x to the 49. Okay. Constant multiple rule. So this one is going to take everything we just learned and put it all together. So the constant multiple rule says is if you have the derivative of some constant multiplied by some variable or some function, in our case we're going to talk about a variable, it's going to equal to a times du over dx. What this looks like is if I take the derivative of, say, 2x cubed. Well, the rule says I can take out the constant, put it in front, and then simply take the derivative of x cubed. Well, we know the derivative of x cubed because we just did that. That's going to be 3x squared. Remember, we're multiplying, so I'm just going to pull out that exponent, the constant number, which then when we simplify gives us 6x squared. So let's do another quick practice, taking the derivative of, say, 4x squared. See if you can do this faster now. Well, we bring down the exponent, which is 2x, and subtract 1 from 2, 1. So 8x. How about 50x cubed? Well, that's 150, 50 times 3, x squared. Okay, so these are the 3 rules for today. Alright, so these are the 3 rules for this tutorial. I will see you again soon. Alright, so these are the 3 rules that we covered for right now. Make sure to check out the next video, which we're going to be talking about the product rule and the quotient rule.